Hi, if we could get folks to sit down in their seats so that we can begin shortly. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Hi, I'm Marguerite Rowe. I'm the State Director for AARP here in Washington State, and welcome to our 6th Congressional District Candidate Forum. I want to welcome those of you who are in the audience, as well as those who are at our watch party in Grays Harbor. We want to begin by acknowledging that we gathered today on the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the South Puget Sound, including the Skokomish, Squaxin, Nisqually, and Puyallup tribes, who've been stewards of this land for thousands of years and who continue to protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations. AARP Washington is presenting this event in coordination with the Key Peninsula News and the Mustard Seed Project of Key Peninsula. I would also like to thank Lisa Bryan, editor of the Key Peninsula News, for her support. This forum is one of several events that AARP is coordinating across the state to engage voters and to encourage them to vote. We have more than 870,000 AARP members in the state, including more than 117,000 in this congressional district, plus a cadre of advocacy volunteers who make these events happen, and I just want to thank all the volunteers, including the mustard seed volunteers who are here today. The purpose of this forum is twofold. One is to assure that voters hear from the candidates on issues that matter to them. and to call on all candidates to pay attention to the issues that matter to voters 50 and older. We are the driving force in every election and will be the majority of the electorate in 2024. A recent AARP poll of older voters found that a majority of older voters say that Social Security is or will be a significant source of their incomes, and Social Security will be an important issue in determining their vote. Voters who are ages 50 and older, regardless of party affiliation, also say they would be more likely to vote for a candidate who supports family caregivers. Family caregivers are the ones who provide essential support that allows folks to remain in their homes and communities as they age. And as a reminder, AARP will continue to advocate and champion the protection of Social Security for today's retirees and future generations. It is our #1 issue. This is a big election year, and importantly, the races at all levels, national, state, and local, matter. But today, we are here to listen to your candidates vying for the open 6th Congressional District seat. We are thrilled to have all the candidates with us today. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us this evening. Now, I would like to introduce Lisa Bryan, Executive Editor of the Key Peninsula News, who will be the moderator. Lisa is an award-winning writer, photographer, and South Sound native. She joined the Key Peninsula News team as a volunteer in 2016, and by 2018 advanced to become executive editor. Under her leadership, the nonprofit newspaper staff have been honored with numerous awards and achieved greater autonomy as an independent nonprofit news organization, a news organization that you can trust. Key Peninsula News demonstrates the importance of high-quality local journalism, which is essential to maintaining well-informed, civically engaged communities poised for success. We are grateful for the Key Peninsula News and the Mustard Seed Project for their help in pulling this event together. Please join me in welcoming the executive editor of Key Peninsula News, Lisa Bryan.
Thank you so much, and I am absolutely thrilled to see so many people in the audience tonight. This is great. I'm here to tell you about the ground rules of the event, but first we're going to introduce everyone. We'll start at the furthest end. We have Commissioner Hilary Franz.
It's wonderful to be here. Is that on?
It's not.
Okay.
But you know what? I will.
This isn't our
I'm just
two-minute
gonna. It is not your 2-minute opening.
Do you
yet.
know how to?
It'll
It
be
is on?
Now you're.
Wow.
Excellent.
Okay, sorry.
You're good.
I am Hilary Franz, the Commissioner of Public Lands.
She is.
Thank you.
And this is Representative Drew MacEwan next
Senator.
to her. Senator, excuse me.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think mine's, there it is. All right, yeah, Senator Drew MacEwan, representing the
Thank
35th
you.
District.
And Emily Randall, our state senator
Hi
in the
there.
26th. And we have Graham Ralston
Thank
from
you very
Port Orchard.
Port
or
Angeles,
Port Angeles?
local attorney, CPA with law practice in Port Angeles.
And Janis Clark. Thank you all for being here. So the ground rules tonight, the event is again being hosted by Key Peninsula News, a nonprofit, nonpartisan local news publication with the support of AARP. AARP is also nonpartisan and has not established a political action committee. It does not support or oppose candidates for public office, nor contribute money to political parties or political candidates' campaigns. AARP educates the public about the issues of concern to older Americans and their families through voter guides, issue workshops, and candidate forums, such as the one we're about to begin. Portions of the event in its entirety and/or photos of the event will be recorded and reused on social media through the general election, November 5th. No candidate literature can be distributed at the event. The organizers will remind the candidates and the audience that this event is not a debate, but rather a forum that's focused on the issues. All candidates agree to restrict their comments to their own work. All candidates agree to remain respectful and courteous toward other candidates, the moderator, and our timekeeper, who is Christina Clem in front. There she is. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to make both opening and closing statements. The order of opening candidate statements will be alphabetical and reversed for the closing statements. I will call on individual candidates in alternating order to answer as many questions throughout the forum as time allows. The candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each question, and the timekeeper will signal to indicate when candidates have 30 seconds remaining. At the end of the countdown, the candidate must stop speaking. You like that? It's novel. We're going to try it here on the KP first. Yes. The forum will last for 90 minutes from open to close, including all of our introductions and concluding remarks. This event is being recorded and live streamed as we speak. So, gosh, the role of the media, I love this. The greatest thing that I get to do is be nonpartisan, and it's great. I just want to tell you that. It's actually a wonderful thing. Our job in the media is to present you the news accurately and fairly and without bias so that you can be informed about the issues of concern and participate and make decisions based on good information. Key Peninsula News has hosted candidate forums with other organizations in the past, and we really appreciate the ability to do this. Thank you. So we're going to move right into questions. And, oh, yes, exactly. Opening statements. That's a good place to start, too. So with our opening remarks, we are going to begin with Janis Clark. Janis?
Thank you so much. Let's give her a hand.
Thank you.
I am Janis Clark. I am an elected precinct committee officer in the district. I've been in the great state of Washington for over 44 years. In 1980, by way of the military, welcome to Washington State and Mount St. Helens Blue. I am running for the United States House of Representatives, Congressional District number 6, because I believe it is time. It is time to have courage. It is time to use creativity to mix things together that has never come together before. Time to have a community-centered approach in solving problems and issues driven by common sense. Time to bring our youth voices to the center of the table to inform public policy. And it's time for me to be your voice in Washington, D.C. As your America First future Congresswoman and the first Black Cherokee Republican woman that will be in Congress. I will fight for the principles we hold near and dear to our hearts, and I will work tirelessly to build a brighter future for all of us, all the citizens in America. Together, we can work to build a stronger, more prosperous future in America. And a disclaimer, I am 66 years old, so I'm 50 plus.
And next, we have Hilary Franz.
Hello, I'm Hilary Franz, and I'm running to be your next 6th Congressional District Representative. This district is one that's near and dear to my heart. My grandparents came here in 1938, fleeing the black blizzards of the South Dakota Great Depression with my father, who was one at the time. They raised my father, and I spent much of my childhood growing up on that farm. It's where I learned to love the land, and if you take care of the land, it'll take care of you. I then had the great honor of raising my 3 boys and actually caring for my father with dementia for almost 2 decades on Bainbridge Island. It's where I practice environmental land use law and also where I dip my toe into public service and as a city council member and a PCO representative. And for the last 8 years, I've had the greatest honor of my life in representing you as your Commissioner of Public Lands for Washington State. The question I get asked all the time as I travel throughout this district is why? Why would anyone want to be in Congress? It seems to be a mess. Nothing seems to get done. And frankly, that's exactly why I'm running for Congress. One, every single day for the last 8 years, we have been on the front lines of a rapidly changing climate. From increasing wildfires, dying forests, drought, sea level rise, ocean acidification, all things that the 6th District is already experiencing. In my work, I've transformed the way we fight wildfires. I've restored over 600,000 acres of forest. I've helped actually address the drought that we're seeing on our forests and our agricultural lands, as well as in our communities, and addressed sea level rise and ocean acidification. And I'm going to Congress to be able to take the same leadership I have on that issue of climate change and helping our lands, waters, and communities become more resilient because we have no time to waste. I'm also running as I travel throughout the 6th Congressional District. I see too many of our families, our neighbors that are struggling to get by, struggling with the cost of childcare, struggling with the cost of housing, elder care. The fact is that jobs and wages aren't keeping up, and we have too many of our families and our neighbors that are struggling. I have worked throughout this district and the state to actually save jobs and create jobs in new technologies and old technologies, and at the same time worked at the local and state level to provide housing, create housing, even at the Department of Natural Resources where we have residential lands. And I'm going to Congress to make sure that no person is left outside without a roof over their head, and that we are addressing our child care and elder care crisis, something that I've experienced as a mom and as a daughter. I'm also running because I never thought in my children's lifetime that the rights and freedoms that I thought were inherent as a 20-year-old in college would now be at risk and have been at risk with my own kids who are in college currently.
That was brilliant. Thank you. Senator MacEwan.
Thank you. I'm State Senator Drew MacEwan, representing the 35th District, which is Mason County and part of Kitsap and part of Thurston County. Thank you, AARP, for having us here this evening. I look forward to the questions tonight. My background, a lot of new faces here in the crowd that I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet. So for that sake, my background, I came out here in the early 90s via the U.S. Navy. I served in the Naval Nuclear Power Program and was on the submarine force out of Bangor, and just fell in love with the area from that time going forward. And I got out. I was blessed to serve after Desert Storm and before 9/11, and there were not a lot of promotion opportunities during that time frame. But so when I had the window to get out, I took it, and ultimately went into the business world, and with impeccable timing, started my company in late August of 2001. Yeah, and everyone has their stories and how those events affected us. But what for me personally, it was a time to decide, do you pull up by the bootstraps and do you go after and chase the American dream in the face of great adversity? And that was the path I chose. I did not want to do it. I wouldn't want to do it again. But I'm proud that 23 years later, that company is still in business. And that's given me a keen insight into the impact that regulations and taxes have as an employer, as an employee. When your first responsibility is to make sure your employee's paycheck is clearing, those things hit you pretty tough because you've got to make sure that the ends are meeting so that their ends can meet for their families. In 2012, folks in the business community in Shelton asked me to run for the House of Representatives at the state level, and I did that and won that seat and served in the state house for 10 years. And then 2 years ago, my predecessor in the Senate retired and went on to the Senate, where I currently serve. And I'm the ranking Republican on energy, environment, and technology, a committee that's tackling a lot of the tough issues that we do face. I look forward to the questions tonight, but I'll tell you the three things I continue to hear throughout this district. Number one is the economy. And whether you're retired or you're a working family, inflation has wiped out family savings. Credit card debt is spiking at the worst possible time when we've got decade-high interest rates. That is the worst possible scenario that we can be having right now. In fact, just recently I saw a statistic that the number of hardship withdrawals from 401ks, and that's hardship withdrawals defined by the IRS, are people that are taking money out to prevent foreclosure or a medical situation. Just this year, and we're just halfway through the year, it's a 40% increase over last year. We've got to get a handle on it. There are big challenges ahead for us in Congress. I look forward to tackling those and taking your questions tonight, and thank you for having us.
Graham Ralston.
All right. Thank you, and thank you to AARP for hosting the forum tonight, and thank you to our audience and everyone coming here and participating in democracy. My connection to the district goes back 5 generations to my great-great-grandfather, John Ralston, who first arrived in 1889, just 2 weeks after Washington became a state. He served as the first judge for Clallam and Jefferson County. Legacy continued to my grandfather, Mac Thompson, who worked in the timber industry and ran Penn Ply Mill in Port Angeles. And to those people in Aberdeen, another great-grandfather, Ernie Johnson, who worked for Polson Logging on the coast. My story also began in Port Angeles. And in the summers, I sold firewood out of the back of my pickup truck in Port Angeles and went on to become a wildland firefighter the summer after my high school. I eventually went to University of Washington and law school at Seattle University before going to Washington, D.C., and quickly becoming the youngest senior executive at the U.S. Department of Transportation, a unique position where I worked for Republican Secretary Ray LaHood, but underneath the Obama administration, where I ran a national small business organization. It also showed me what's broken in D.C., and I think that this two-party system, and unfortunately what we saw last night at the debate, was a resemblance of what's broken and why I'm running as an independent. And what I saw back there, and in 3 main areas, if we want to fix Congress and preserve our democracy, we need to address the 3 issues of party loyalty, celebrity politics, and fundraising. In party loyalty, we look at people that are already serving and can't speak out against people that may not be a good candidate, like the presidential candidates we saw last night. My independent platform agrees with the majority of Americans that we can do better as a country. Celebrity politics, how many people have been or seen a U.S. congressional member address an empty chamber? Because that's what happens, and they speak for scoring points and raising dollars. And that's the 3rd point in terms of fundraising. That's breaking our country. If you look at an average day of a congressional member in Washington, D.C., out of a 9-hour workday, they might spend 7 hours trying to raise dollars for their campaign or working for their party, and only 2 hours actually doing real work. My campaign is 100% self-funded. I'm dedicated and loyal to people first over party, and I hope that you can see the trust through generations that I have with the community and that I hope to bring to the people of this district.
And last but not least, Senator Emily Randall.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so glad to be here with all of you today, and to the folks who are joining remotely to get the chance to have a discussion about the policies and the opportunities ahead of us. I'm Emily Randall. I'm your state senator, and it has been my incredible honor to represent the people of the 26th district for these last 6 years. I grew up just up the road in Sunny Slope in the house that my mom grew up in. And my grandparents on both sides of my family found their way to Kitsap County in order to build a life of opportunity for themselves and their children and their grandchildren. And I grew up in a community of people who were dedicated to building better for their neighbors, for folks they hadn't met yet, for the people down the street who had a house fire or who had a aging parent or had a new baby. I see our community every day find a way to ensure that we have the things that we need to take care of each other. And as a member of the state legislature, I have worked so hard to carry those values with me, to work alongside you, to bring important dollars home to our district, to invest in the capital construction at the Mustard Seed Project, to work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to bring money home for our food banks and for our infrastructure, for opportunity for young people and for the support that folks who are aging in our community need. Over and over, I have heard stories from folks who wanted to be able to grow old in their homes, but who didn't have family to help care for them, who didn't have a safety net. And so one of the policies that I am particularly proud to have worked on in the legislature is passing Washington Cares in order to ensure that we do have a safety net for families who need it, for individuals who need a little extra help building ramps or bringing someone into their home to help cook meals or widening doorways. Now, I know that we have more policy changes to make to ensure that we all have the support that we need, and we have a program that works for all of us. But policies like this that create a care network and care infrastructure are so important. And they're personal for me. I lost my grandparents a couple years ago, and they lived in the same house since 1967, and I grew up as the older sibling of a sister with complex disabilities. I've seen the challenges that face our families around healthcare access and affordability, around housing affordability. And that's why I've worked to lead our state policy on expanding and building a path towards universal healthcare. I'm excited to continue working alongside you and fighting for a future that's better for all of us. Thank you so much.
And now we get to ask some questions. The first question goes to Janis Clark. And the question is, 1 in 5 voters are caregivers, and they vote, yet they don't get the support they need. What financial policies or programs would you implement to support family caregivers?
As a veteran of over 30 plus years, my father served in the Korean War. He recently passed in 2020. My work in my nonprofit, I started over 30 years ago, envisioned, but I resigned my state job of 7 years to start, to come out in community, and I thought it was about just serving the youth. But what I found out that youth don't come without families, as you all can imagine, and it's from the womb to the tomb. And as 30 years later now, understanding the need for not only my mom, my adopted mom, who is a widow twice removed, in her home where she raised her children, where her husband took care of her, and they both, as Christian values, pastor and co-pastor, and building schools and community, Christian schools, so parents can have choices. So when we talk about the care and policies, we also need to be reminded that we should be fiscally responsible. And I believe there's a number of different taxes and other spendings that could be considered wasting of taxpayers' dollars, that if we're very strategic about our approach and understand the need that those that have homes, we know homelessness is an issue. So there's many people aging and graying are without homes and cannot afford to stay where they are. So it's a very real and present danger as we age and gray to make sure that we're caring for all of us in this ecosystem. So I appreciate the question, and my work of 30 years resigning state government to start to come out in community to help families, all of us, and I firmly believe we're better together. Thank you.
Excellent. And now we have Hilary Franz.
Thank you. My father was diagnosed with dementia at 65 years old. He raised my sister and I on his own. And at the time he was diagnosed, I had one small baby. I cared for him for a decade with 3 boys below my hip. They're now well above my head. And I had to literally experience not only finding childcare, but also finding elder care. We were able to do a system that enabled him to actually live in our home, and my children learned how to care for him, and we were able to bring caregiving in, but it was expensive and it was hard to find. I truly believe this crisis has only grown since my father died in 2017. We absolutely need to begin investing in a caregiving workforce now. We're already behind, as I experienced myself. I support right up front the Long-Term Care Workforce Support Act, which would provide actually increased federal funding to support workers in the long-term care industry and would boost the worker pipeline that right now is so hard to find, both on the elder care and the child care. I also support legislation like the Social Security Caregiver Credit Act to provide actually Social Security benefits to people who are serving and caring for our elderly. And I also think that we need to be making sure that we're working more carefully to actually invest in housing and availability of housing. I was fortunate to be able to build an ADU that enabled my father to have some independency for a long time while being close to home. It made it easier for us to find those caregivers. But we have got to do more to train them. We've got to do more to pay for them and have the funding for it and bring the cost of housing down. And we have to do more to make sure they're getting the benefits that they need in Social Security.
Thank you. Senator MacEwan.
Well, I think one of the biggest things in all this, there's, and this is going to transcend, I'm sure, a number of questions tonight, but our reimbursement rates at the federal level are woefully below fully funding, and that creates stresses on everybody involved. And so, one, we've got to fix that situation. Another big part of this that I've learned through the time in state government is relief. People that are in these situations are on 24/7 with very rarely getting a break. And we've got to have a system in place that we're training that next workforce. And in the meantime, they can give relief for a day or two to people that are in those situations where they're providing that care for their loved ones. And I think that's vitally important as well. And this is an issue that we've had since my seatmates Dan Griffey and Travis Couture here, and I remember Dan and I have dealt with this since day one in the state legislature. And there's a lot of things at the state level that need to happen that have created hurdles and obstacles to people being able to do this. But we're running for federal office, and I think so I can't deal with the state items in that regard at this point. But the biggest part of that is the full reimbursements, and that we have that happening. It's an economic stress on families that doesn't need to be there, and that needs to be the first priority to get done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ralston.
Back in 2003, when my younger brother was 17, he fell off a yacht that was in Port Angeles Harbor, and he ended up being a quadriplegic from his accident. And while he has full mental capacity, when tragedy strikes like that, you learn what it takes to be a caregiver, and our family coming together. And when I say family, you know, brother, sister, parents, but growing up in a small town, it's really about community. And what you learn is that when it is your family, you're more passionate about helping your brother through that, or helping friends of, you know, parents, and really coming together to help whoever needs that help. And I also see this in my private practice, where unfortunately some people come and retire in the local area, and they may not have the same support system that maybe my brother has or our family had to be able to support him. And where do those people go? Where are the services that are needed there? And first and foremost, we should be encouraging family and reimbursing them and paying them to support their family members, because you're never going to receive better care than people that love you and want to see you doing well. But second, if you don't have those people around you and you're a retiree in the area, where do you go for someone to be a healthcare power of attorney to help you if you don't have the capacity to make those decisions? And I think beyond just providing economic incentives, we need to be thinking as a community how we bring people together and connect them to retirees or people who may need those services as a support. And it really starts at community first.
Yeah. Senator Randall.
You know, I think we all bring with us, everyone in this room and all of us here at the front, our own experiences as caregivers or folks who needed to receive care. Our family stories and the stories of voters in our community should be what inspire us to pass stronger policy and to ensure that our economy works better for all of us. You know, I remember when my mom was fairly new single parent and struggling to reenter the workforce, how important the child tax credit was for her to be able to support her family and all of our family. And I think about that, I thought about that when we finally passed the Working Families Tax Credit here in Washington State and started to write our tax code to ensure that folks who are struggling the most have a little bit of relief. And, you know, I think mechanisms like that to ensure that we are getting money into the pockets of families who are struggling to afford childcare, who are struggling to afford elder care, to ensure that there is a tax credit that meets those needs is so important. And especially as we, you know, look at the expiration of the Trump tax cuts looming, we need to think about how we are investing our tax dollars into the families and entities that need it most. We definitely need to increase reimbursement rates. We definitely need to build pathways towards a caregiving workforce. And I've been so proud to lead some of that work here in Washington as the co-chair of the Joint Legislative Executive Committee on Planning for Aging and Disability Issues. And look forward to bringing that experience with me to ensure that our economy works better for all folks, especially those who are in need of care.
Excellent. The next question, as we all know, Social Security will run out of funds in the next decade. Why are the majority of Congress failing to tackle the issue? Instead, they promise not to touch Social Security. Congress needs to find a solution. What would you do to shore up Social Security for current and future generations? And here we will start with Hilary Franz.
Caring for my father, like I said, for over a decade, while also raising small children, I know how important Social Security is. Social Security truly is the promise that we have made for generations, and we have a responsibility to fix it. I truly believe we don't have any time to waste in fixing it because we've already lost time. I truly believe the Social Security 2100 Act, which actually helps raise the cost of living component and also shores up Social Security for the next several decades, is absolutely critical, and I do believe it is also something that should have bipartisan support. I also think we need to pass the Social Security Fairness Act. If you think about how divided our politics is, there is one thing that does not divide us for sure, and that is that we all are aging, number one, as I turn 54 next week, and we are all seeing the need and the importance of having those benefits as we age. And we also have parents or family members who have faced whatever health crisis or aging and need and depend on Social Security. I think this should be a bipartisan issue, and I think both of those laws need to pass immediately.
Thank you. Senator MacEwan?
Thank you. Quick funny anecdote to this question. When I was first elected, in the summer of 2013, my 94-year-old grandmother was in an assisted living facility in Minneapolis, and I went to see her. And she was, as any grandma would be, so proud that her grandson had gotten elected, right? And so she's introduced me to all her friends, her bridge club playing friends. And she introduces me as a U.S. Senator. I was like, well, and suddenly I'm getting bombarded on Social Security. And, so she'd be proud we're answering this question finally today. No, you know what? We need hardcore reforms. The income threshold today is way too low on when you get taxed. You already got taxed once, and if you need to subsidize your family's income and you've got to take on, unfortunately, another job in retirement, I don't think you should be paying taxes yet again on those Social Security benefits. That needs to change. That is a big part of it. And also, we have got to separate out the Social Security receipts from the general budget. And that hasn't, I mean, everyone's talked about that for decades, but it's never happened. And it needs to. It's used to it was used to punt down the hall further true economic reforms and budget processes. That can't happen. This is money that you paid into, and we need to ensure that it is there not only for you but the future generations. I would also highly suggest that we look at how, again, on the tax side of this. You know, as you know, you're paying Social Security FICA taxes from dollar one, right? I would suggest that on your first $10,000 to $20,000, we would need to figure this out in a budget process that you're not paying that. The employer side still pays, but give people a break as they're entering the workforce, getting those first-time jobs, that they have more income up front but aren't getting penalized on the Social Security side. So there are a number of things I think we can do there. The biggest one is the tax item on secondary income and how that affects your Social Security benefits currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ralston?
In my opening, I shared that the number one thing that we need to do first is fix Congress so they can come together and actually solve this problem together. Number two, why do we even have a problem with not enough funds for Social Security? Let's start there. And I don't think it means we need to raise more taxes to pay into that. Where can we cut spending? How do we balance the budget? People are feeling this today from inflation. I was at a pro bono legal clinic just a month ago talking to someone that was living off $1,000 a month. They're already feeling like that $1,000 is down to $800 or $700. And what we need to do immediately is balance this budget so that we stop the inflation that not only eats away at Social Security, but hard-earned dollars for people's retirement that feels like they have less purchasing power. I've been in DC for 7 years. I know how to work towards balancing the budget. And the two main areas that I would do is, one, I'd incentivize federal employees to call out waste throughout our federal programs instead of always looking at new ways to add on new programs. And number two, similar to what the Trump administration did in saying that for every new regulation you want to pass, you should remove two. For every new dollar, we should be looking at how do we remove and match the same dollar plus another 20%. That's how we first then balance the budget, which can ensure, as we look at other ways, instead of taxing people more who already feel it to fund Social Security, let's look at other ways throughout our government to cut the spending and find alternative solutions to add funds to Social Security.
Thank you. Senator Randall?
Thank you. Excuse me. I really appreciate Senator MacEwan raising, thinking about like when the tax rate for Social Security starts. I think the more support that we can give to lowest income Washingtonians, the better. I also think that we have to call out that it's at $168,000 that we stop taxing folks on their Social Security. So if you are making $200,000 a year, that money above $168,000 is not applied Social Security tax. So that money is not going into the Social Security Trust Fund in order to socialize that cost. There are so many ways in which our budget and our tax code puts more burden on lower income families in order to pay for the programs that we need and rely on. And we cannot continue to give tax breaks to the wealthiest among us and to let the biggest big businesses off the hook while hardworking families are struggling. And I think this is one place where we've shown progress here in Washington State, and I want to continue on that track record that I have proven to fight to ensure that we are socializing the cost of these programs across all the income spectrum so that it's not just the wealthiest among us who are getting off while we need to shore up Social Security. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
Thank you. It's a big issue, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you, even though I'm a unicorn, and I wave my little magic wand, and we're going to fix Social Security. But when I opened up, I talk about using creativity to mix things together that never come together before. And those ideas that has been illustrated previously with the speakers, there's a lot of weight in it. And we need to just come together and listen to one another and really be strategic about how we approach this number one priority for the welfare of our country, for the freedom for those that have paid taxes. And I'm one of those at 66, so this is a big issue for me. And knowing that people are not able to care for some of the things that they would like to care for, the people they would like to care for. So I'm interested in joining hands with anyone that want to solve the problem and reach across the aisles and say we're smart enough, we're here to do the people's business. Let's look at ways that we need to cut waste and fraud, waste and abuse, and take those dollars and deposit those investments where they need to be. And that's the number one issue is Social Security, and it's big enough for all of us to solve it together. Thank you.
Thank you. There seems to be a great divide in the attitudes toward and acceptance of the concept of man-made climate change between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, from their apparent presidential candidates down to most down-ticket party members. Where do you stand on this important issue? And we'll begin with Senator MacEwan.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I don't develop my political thought process based on what any other politician is saying. I listen to the constituents that I represent. We're all for the environment. How can you not be? We have got to, though, embrace not only new ways of doing things, but not be so quick as to cut off the hand that's feeding us. We can develop new, clean energies, and we can add those to the grid. But you don't prematurely take away what you've got going right now and hope that something else is going to fix it. Energy is very powerful, and there is no perfect, clean source of energy. The production of a solar panel takes 19 toxin chemicals that have no half-life. They're in the ground forever. You produce a wind turbine, the carbon production from that, after it's decommissioned, outweighs what it saves you on the other side. We obviously know the issues with coal, and nuclear is carbon-free, but you have other issues there as well. My approach to this is do it all, and let the technologies prove themselves out. Why would we take away right now in this state we passed a law that's going to allow for Puget Sound Energy to say, I'm not going to serve you natural gas anymore. And maybe down the road, that's the way we need to go, but we don't have the capacity to back that up. And that is a 20% cleaner technology than other similar forms. And at the same time, we subsidize them, a foreign-owned multinational corporation, to allow them to go and build projects and then raise your rates before those things are online. We've got a lot of work to do in this area. We don't have the transmission capability, and we don't have the generating capability. We've got to get serious. We've got to get aggressive, and I will never vote for favored trade status for any nation that's one of the major polluters. If we want to get serious about this on a global basis, then it's time to get tough with those that are the worst polluters in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ralston.
Man-made climate change is real. I just don't agree with the approach and how we're really taxing those least able to afford it to pay for it. And what do I mean by that? It hits us at the gas tank. And when it hits us at the gas tank, it makes all of our food and other prices go up. And who pays for that? People least able to afford it. People sometimes struggling to get by on Social Security. These are not the people that I want to shoulder the burden in trying to tackle climate change. We should be looking at those most able to afford it to tackle the things of climate change. And that's a priority for me. Number two, when we look at investments in green energy and technology, I think sometimes it's not always wise to say, let's do everything that we can right now, today. We're embarking on a new age of technology. Artificial intelligence and large language models are unlocking things that we never thought possible before, and we're scaling up our abilities of what we can really do to tackle climate change. Instead of spending $50, $60 billion today, next year, the year after that, why not wait a couple years and see what artificial intelligence is able to help us push forward with and make a larger investment in that 3-year period of time? We all do that personally when we look at how we make investments for a home, how we make investments for a business. Why don't we hold our government accountable for the same things that we need to do in our personal lives on the right time to make those investments?
Thank you. Senator Randall.
You know, I think we in this district are uniquely aware of the risks in order of not responding to the climate crisis. We live in an especially beautiful place, a unique place unlike anywhere else in the world, and we choose to live here among the beautiful waters and trees. And I'm grateful for the work that Commissioner Franz has done to protect our trees and forests in Washington State against an increased number of wildfires and being on the front lines of the climate crisis. I'm also really proud of the work that we have done here in Washington to pass nation-leading policy to combat climate change, to ensure that we are reducing our carbon emissions, we are investing in the electrification and the decarbonization of our transportation sector. And I'm also really proud of the work that we have done in the Senate Higher Education and Workforce Development Committee to invest in our research institutions and our community and technical colleges in financial aid for students who are going to go to school and develop some of the newest technology that we are going to need to continue fighting this climate crisis. I'm proud of the Climate Corps policy that we passed recently to bring folks into this climate resiliency work, to ensure that we have the technology that is cutting edge and that we're not just operating with the same old battery technology that we discovered that is the only thing that's, we can think of. We know that we have to keep moving faster. We have to keep innovating, and we have to come up with those solutions here and not let other countries lead the way. We also have to ensure that we're reinvesting in families who are struggling the most. I've talked about that a lot, but this climate crisis is coming, and it's our job to stem that tide.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
Thank you.
man-made climate change, one thing I'm sure of, God is not creating any more dirt. And when we get down to our natural resources, I'm reminded of my work as an employee, a state employee with DNR, and harvesting timber sales, et cetera. It was a major part and probably still is. Commissioner could tell us that. But what saddened my heart, 1980, coming from the great state of South Carolina, married a Washingtonian, had never been out here, loved the greenery, God's country, and I would see a lot of clear cutting. And as I began to study and think about the world that we leave behind, all of us are in this ecosystem together, so we all have a part to play in it. So as we are not looking at wasteful spending, we have to be good stewards of not only of the land, but of the financial tax-paying dollars that we all contribute to. So as we look at the different acts and laws, we cannot legislate our way out of it. We're going to need common sense solutions and prioritize those things which we know the polluters from other countries that bringing in pollution and contaminants in our water, in the foods that we eat, et cetera. So if we start down to the basics, thank you so much, I see the time. The climate is all of us, what we breathe, what we air, the air that we breathe, the food that we eat, and the relationships that we make with one another, because we also carbon trace. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Commissioner Franz.
So yes, man-made climate change is real, and I can say that firsthand. I also think that, and I can say it firsthand by my experience, obviously, managing 6 million acres of land, 2.6 million acres aquatic, 2 million acres of forest land, 1 million acres of agricultural land, and I see every single day a rapidly changing climate. And this isn't a question of whether we pay for it or not. We're already paying for it. We're paying for it last year with over 1,500 fires and more fires west of the Cascades for the first time in recorded history than east of the Cascades. We're paying for it in the dying forests that are leading to these more catastrophic fires, which means that we're not able to use that wood for our schools, our hospitals, and our homes, and we're harming our fish and wildlife habitat as a result. We're seeing it in higher food prices as we see increasing drought and now dust storms even on our southeast Washington farm and agricultural lands. We're seeing it now with heat being the nation's deadliest natural disaster, and especially in our urban areas. And we're seeing it in ocean acidification decimating our shellfish and fisheries. And we're also seeing it in the context of sea level rise, where in this community alone, we have in 6th District 3 communities that already need to be moved up to higher ground. I truly believe that actually this is an area we can come together. And I don't just say that in words and hope and optimism, I've actually seen it. I have been on the ground in the most rural Republican conservative areas, actually working to knit for the first time the environment and healing our lands and our waters with economic opportunity, from everything from forest health, where 600,000 acres have been restored, is now creating new job opportunities in crossland timber, mass timber, biomass, and biochar. I've seen it in the context of agriculture production, which has grown because we're taking the biochar work that we've done and are now launching in Port Angeles, which will create hundreds of jobs, and actually put on the soil and agricultural lands for better production.
Thank you. What would you do to help support funding for the military and support our veterans and their families? The first question goes to Mr. Ralston.
Well, I know we have two former military members on stage tonight, so thank you both very, very much for your service. I think first and foremost, it starts with that kind of community support and recognizing our veterans. But that also means how are we supporting them financially from the government? And we need to do a better job from Congress in passing laws that prioritize not only when soldiers go overseas, but also making sure that they're supported at home. And before soldiers are even sent overseas, how do we make sure that we have a foreign policy that tries to keep us out of wars to begin with? If we look at our budget once again, where we have overspending and we've spent too much on military in the sense of engaging in wars that may be unnecessary, it's not just the economic loss, it's the human life loss. And that's what's most important and paramount here. And when we do send those soldiers overseas, we do need to be supporting them when they're here at home. I think the other thing to keep in mind in terms of our national defense and what we're doing with our military is really looking at artificial intelligence. And where I spend the majority of some of my work life is with a artificial intelligence company out of Seattle, with a childhood best friend that I work with. And understanding the power of what this can do, not only to help people, but also in terms of a foreign policy issue and how we need to strategically plan for national defense and autonomous weaponized vehicles and armies. And that's something that needs to be paramount anytime that we're talking about our military.
Thank you. Senator Randall.
So representing a community of veterans and active duty members, I think so often about the work that we need to do to support all of our neighbors. One of the first policies that I worked on in the legislature was establishing an LGBTQ veterans coordinator at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And that policy came to me from a conversation door knocking when a neighbor told me that because they were discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, they were struggling to be able to access the veteran services that they had earned when they put their life on the line for our country. And so we established that position, and then we went on to establish a similar position for military spouses at the Department of Veterans Affairs, because spouses of so many of our active duty military members needed more support getting their licenses sped through in the system and approved for their workplaces to ensure that they could get jobs when they were stationed here. We've worked to ensure and pass policy that allows students to be able to enroll in their local public school before they even have permanent housing, once their family has gotten their orders. This work to make sure that our community members have the support that they need is work that I have been so proud to do as a member of the legislature. And it's work that has been inspired by conversations with my neighbors. I know we have a lot of work to do around the VA, because I've heard those stories too of long wait times, of long travel times. I'm really proud that we finally broke ground and established an office in Silverdale that's easier to get to for folks who are seeking VA care. We've got more to do around mental health, and we've got a labor and delivery wing at the Naval Hospital that has been shut down and has had an impact on families. I'm excited to work with neighbors to solve these problems.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. When we talked about caregiving, my husband, Dr. Alan Watkins, he is a Marine of 26 years, once a Marine, always a Marine. In 2020, he had a hemorrhagic stroke. And through learning to walk and talk and communicate again, after 5 months of being hospitalized, because the veterans, we have an option to bring your veteran home, and he was receiving care. He lived there, so I spoke to all the powers to be to bring him home and provided all of the therapies that he needed. That it doesn't stop there. This is the work that I'm doing. My nonprofit, safehomesintl.org. We have 3 divisions now under my leadership. 2 of those divisions are women veterans, because we have unique challenges and issues that our brothers and sisters do not face. We're also caregivers and life givers. The 3rd one is Military a Wellness Initiative Network, whereas soldiers, active duty military guard reservists, and their families are transitioning to lives outside of the military, we make sure that there's a soft handoff. And we don't send them from one place to the next, but we bring the resources to them. So we need to do more. This is one of the reasons why I'm running, and I hope I can do it shortly because it triggers my PTSD about how we are dying and veterans are waiting why our dollars are going to support other efforts, why our breast care in the women's entire VA has been taken away from us, and we have to go in community. So this is a big issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Franz.
Thank you. First, I want to recognize and honor all of our servicemen and women who are up here on the stage, as well as in the audience and at home, giving your life for service for your country and for others, to me, is one of the most noble things. I also, while I've never served in the military, I lead a wildfire fighting agency and an agency that is filled with many veterans who are finding work within the Department of Natural Resources, fighting fires and protecting our communities. And I inherited an agency that had a budget of 0 every year in wildfire response and only 8 Vietnam War helicopters to fight those fires. They had the bullet holes to show for it. It was an eye-opener for me about how we have underinvested in the infrastructure and the people with only 40 firefighters to fight them in our state agency. That is also ripples through our military response, and I believe that we must continue to be investing in our military and the infrastructure, the resources in the air and the ground, and our men and women who are serving. I believe we have a responsibility to all those who have fought before us to protect our democracy, protect our freedoms, and protect our safety and security, as well as other countries as well. I believe we must stay invested in SIOP. Obviously, not only do I oversee geology and know that we have 5 live volcanoes and 3, the threat of the big earthquake and tsunami, which holds a risk for that area, we must invest in it not only for the safety of that facility, but also the civilians and military that serve. We must also be recognizing how much they gave their lives, and we have, I believe, a moral responsibility to make sure that we are ensuring that our veterans have the kind of pay and security, the health care, that they have housing and the resources they need. And as somebody who's been working to actually ensure job opportunities for our veterans, we must make sure that happens.
Thank you. AARP members. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator MacEwan. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So 2 parts of this question. One, what are we doing to ensure our military strength is there? Tackle that first. It's not always about throwing more money at something. It's about spending it right. And I'm going to sound like a broken record to these two, because we've had these a couple of these in the past week. But at the end of the shipyard line, our 2 Littoral-class combat ships, one of the worst programs the Navy's ever embarked on, and it was a complete failure. And we're decommissioning them as quickly as we're building them. We can't do programs like that. You've got to listen to the people on the ground. I meet regularly with retired commanding officers and flag officers from the Navy about the needs and where our strengths are, where our opportunities are, and we've got to be able to do that. When somebody says a program isn't working, shut it down. We have got to ensure the resources are there for armed forces to be able to be a strong deterrent. If you want to preserve the peace, you got to be prepared for war. Because when you're weak, it invites aggression. And if you look around the world today, the Ukraine situation, the Israel and Gaza situation, what's happening in Yemen, in the straits there with our shipping, China's threat on Taiwan, North Korea hell-bent on hitting the U.S. territories with ICBMs, this is not a time to be weak. We've got to spend the money right. And we've got to ensure that our military personnel have the training, have the resources they need in order to fulfill a forward mission so that we are a deterrent. I don't want to see our sons and daughters have to ever go into war again. That's a novel idea, I know, but if we're strong, we deter that aggression. Finally, when it comes to veterans issues, one of the biggest things I will propose on day one is a reform to our GI Bill, which is much better in post 9/11 than it was pre, but allow veterans to also be able to access that for a first-time home purchase and to be able to utilize those resources. We can come up with a down payment program. And finally, General Stanley McChrystal, when I had got to meet with him a few years ago. He said it very well. When people come back from the military, they don't want to be set on the mantle, and politicians like to do that all the time. They want an economy that works for them so they can have a job or create a business that they can provide for their family. Thank you.
Thank you. We have got time for one more question, but it's going to be rapid fire responses. So we're going to need 1 minute responses. You ready? Okay. I don't know. Who are we going to start with? It's a good question. Let's see. Well, we're coming along. Who is next? We are going to start with Emily Randall. So Senator Randall, AARP members consistently express a desire to stay in their own homes and communities for as long as possible. But to do that, we need a larger workforce. What policies or programs can be implemented to increase our caregiving workforce?
Thank you. I think one of the issues that we have worked on at the state level that I think we need to add efforts to at the federal level is wage and career ladders in so many of these caregiving workforce spaces. Often in-home caregivers have been seen sort of as a not important job to invest in. And we know that it is essential for our long-term future. So investing in wages and benefits for those caregivers is so, so important. I think we also need to be thinking about creative housing opportunities, adult family homes, but also for aging individuals with disabilities, different creative home solutions, because I talk to a lot of our neighbors who are struggling to imagine what their adult children's living situation will look like as they themselves age.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
One of the issues that we are working on is land development, and there's been much to do about the giving of lands or lands being sold for $1 to land develop, and then not really have the infrastructure for the architect and the trades. So if we're improving the larger workforce, we really should invest in high school age before they get out about how important the trades are, and create an opportunity where they, like Habitat for Humanity, to help build your home, and at the end of that, affordable home, at the end of that, then you take pride in owning your home. And so I believe if we give the youth a vision before they get out of school that the trades is a great option, and they start putting sweat equity in, I think in the long run, it will help us solve one of our homelessness issue problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Franz?
I mentioned the laws that would help earlier, but so Long-Term Workforce Support Act, the Social Security Caregiver Credit Act, as well as the Credit Caregiving Act. But I want to speak actually just from a personal story, because our personal experiences shape our priorities, and they also shape our perspectives. Like I said, my father, we cared for him for about 5 years in his own home before the police called us and said it was time for him to be cared for, and he was less than 70 at the time. And I moved him into a home of 800 square feet with 3 small boys below my hip. I was the only woman of 5 in there, with 1 bathroom and 2 bedrooms. And we were fortunate that we began immediately working on building an ADU. We had a 5-acre farm, and we had the ability to build an ADU on, and it enabled him to live with us and actually live in dignity. It was hard to find care, but my children became the caregivers for them along with myself.
Thank you, Commissioner. Senator MacEwan?
Yeah, I think everybody wants to stay in their home as long as they possibly can. And one of the biggest obstacles to that are the number of people that we can have that, or that are available, to provide that care. So let's make some massive investments and incentivize the training and the education that's needed to be those caregivers. And I would equate this similarly to what we do in the medical community with doctors when they go to medical school. If they accept and choose to work in a rural area, a good portion of their medical school debt is forgiven. We could do a similar program. I mean, rural areas like the 6th District that are very underserved, what an opportunity. We'll help provide that education, that training for you to be a caregiver and to provide the services that are needed in rural areas. In exchange for that, we'll help get you through the process. And I think doing programs like that incentivizes and creates those opportunities to help along those ways. And when it comes to the housing, I would suggest, we don't have time to, I've already over, look at the Houston, Texas housing projects and what they've done there to resolve a lot of this.
That was really good. That was hard. Mr. Ralston.
I'll never forget when I was in elementary school, Franklin Elementary in Port Angeles, as a field trip, we would actually go to adult living centers. And what a connection that was at a young age to be able to engage with their community in a different way, to build relationships that then you can think about later on in life. I've already built this type of connection that's really important to give back in my community. Also with my younger brother, becoming a caregiver for him, we quickly saw, the home wasn't ready at first for him to come back to. And it is difficult for families to have a loved one in a care facility that maybe it's not everything that that person wanted, and how do we get them home? One solution that we ended up working with is, and in rural areas that other people could also implement, is working with local nursing programs. So finding people that are going through the nursing school, it can be a win-win solution where they're getting experience and you're also getting care for your loved one in their home.
Thank you. That wraps up the question portion of our program, and we are now moving into closing statements. You have 2 minutes each, and we begin with Senator Randall.
Thank you. I have been so proud to get to represent this community where I grew up, where my parents grew up, where I live and work alongside my neighbors to build solutions, to build a better future for all of us. I was inspired to run for office the first time after the 2016 election, when I knew that the work that I had been doing in the healthcare and education space to provide access to healthcare for families and to fight for reproductive rights was at risk under the Trump administration. And over these last 6 years in the legislature, I have worked diligently to ensure that Washington State is one of the strongest and most protected places to access reproductive health care, not just for Washingtonians, but for folks from Idaho and Texas and Florida who have to come here to receive care safely. But we've also expanded health care and built a pathway towards universal health care with my bill to establish the Universal Health Care Commission. We've led the country in passing the WellCares Act to create a health care safety net, a long-term care safety net. We've invested in programs in our communities to allow folks to thrive. I'm running now because I'm worried about the future of our democracy, but I'm also worried that the work that we have done in this Washington is at risk if we don't have strong leaders at the federal level. Not only might we not go forward, might we not get the investments that we need, but we might be forced backwards. I'm proud to have the support of more than 4,000 individual grassroots donors, U.S. Senator Patty Murray, Planned Parenthood Action Fund, SEIU, caregivers, and more than a dozen members of Congress, League of Conservation Voters, and the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, a community that has helped me win tough elections before, and a community that has my back now because we can work together to solve big problems.
Thank you, Senator Randall. Mr. Ralston.
Insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over and over again and expecting change. This is why I'm running as an independent and why I couldn't stand up and run as a Democrat or a Republican, because of what I saw in Washington, D.C., because of what I see now in our broken system, and because I believe in actual change. And the way to do that is to lead with values and principles. And what does that mean for me? That means that I'm 100% self-funded. It means that I'm loyal to the people in the community that I grew up with, that my friends were maybe, my grandparents were friends with their grandparents. And growing up and going to the same elementary school, middle school, high school, and having lifelong friendships with those people, you don't focus on who's Democrat or who's Republican. You focus on common sense and thinking about solutions for people that are in your community. And that's absolutely my priority, is looking at what's best from both parties, not trying to score points against one party or another. And when we look at who can deliver value on day one in Washington, D.C., I spent 7 years there. I was the youngest senior executive in a 50,000-person organization. I know what goes on there. And what you need is, you need someone that you can trust. You need someone that knows how to navigate the federal system. And you need someone that's going to represent you well and write bills that support the community. I've been here in my family for 5 generations. You can trust me. I've been in D.C. I know how to navigate the system and deliver resources to our community. I look forward to earning your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator MacEwan.
Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you, AARP, for hosting this. It's a wonderful opportunity to get in front of all of you. The challenges before us are large, and we live, needless to say, in a very divided nation right now. And it's going to take tested leadership to solve the issues that are before us. And I look at my background in the Navy and the time there, running a business for the past 20-plus years, in the last 12 years in the state legislature. It has given me a well-rounded opportunity and experience to be able to embark on this next adventure and to represent the 800,000 people in this district, to work on the economy and the solutions that we need to have there, to actually get a federal budget passed. That hasn't happened since 1997. We need to structurally reform what is going on in Congress, or for that matter, what's not going on. We've got to ensure our military has the resources it needs so that we can maintain our freedoms and project that forward for us. And we're the 5th most trade-dependent state in the nation. We're not going to be able to keep that if we don't have freedom of the seas. And our shipyards have been lacking in the investments that they need. Folks, these are serious times, and it's not time to call up somebody from the minors. You need to be tested. You need to have the ability to lead in these issues. And the people of this district will always come first, just as they have in my state legislative district. It's not about answering to somebody else or what the whims of another politician are. No, it's about the constituents you represent. And I've always put that first. I'll continue to put that first. And I do believe sincerely that our greatest days are yet to come. Our nation's been through struggles before, and we're going to find our way through what we're facing right now. And we're gonna rise out of this and be even stronger than we have in the past. And with your help and your support, we'll get that done. And I look forward to earning your vote over the coming months. Thank you.
Senator. Commissioner Franz.
Thank you again for having us. You know, I said earlier that our personal and professional experience shapes our perspective and it shapes our priorities. As a small child, I had to experience what housing insecurity looked like, and it has made me a committed, passionate about making sure no one goes a day without a roof over their head. I've worked at the local level and the state level on housing, and it's something that we need even more investment and support at the federal level. I've also know, as you heard my stories, how challenging it is to be able to find childcare and elder care. And this is an urgent need in every corner of this district, every corner of the state, and every corner of this country. It was something that I will go fight for every single day in Congress, to be able to make sure we are training the workforce we need in every corner of the state for childcare and elder care, and that we're making it affordable to all. In addition to that, economic development. There are too many of us are struggling to find good jobs and hold good jobs. I've worked throughout every corner of this district and the state in being able to not only save critical jobs, whether it's in natural resources or maritime, commercial, industrial, and I have worked throughout every corner of the state to actually grow our economy and make sure we're saving the jobs, but also training the workforce of tomorrow that we are so urgently needing. And as you've heard today, Every single day, we are on the front lines of a rapidly changing climate that I have experienced and had to fight to protect in making our lands, communities, and our waters more resilient. I truly believe all of these issues, while we stand as a divided state and we stand as a divided country between urban consumers and rural producers, between Republican and Democrat, that if more of our leaders and more of our community members actually showed up the way my firefighters do every single day, many of them the age of my youngest son of 19, they are running into fires while everyone is running away, never asking if you're black or white, rich or poor, Republican or Democrat. I am going to Congress to represent that same kind of courage, leadership, and bipartisanship.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
Thank you. Here's what I heard tonight. The importance of assuring that we have caring, productive, and socially responsible members of society. Those that will value and have guiding principles to care for us that are aging and graying, but also the lives of those that are being born into the situations that they are. We hope they would age and gray as well. To ensure that we join hands together, that we have a society where our future is into perpetuity as it relates to our Social Security. We cannot allow it to fail us. Climate change is real. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater because of some new creativity. Supporting veterans and their families, paramount. If we want national security, then we must ensure our military is strong. And as a soldier, I'm a commissioned officer. I went to Officers Candidate School. I made history in this state. President Ronald Reagan commissioned me. And we know something about when they call you a soldier or a sailor, or Marine, or Coast Guard, or the Air Force, that get ready to fight. So our country is worth fighting for, and we need people that is willing to fight and fire people who are not doing their jobs. Yes, a larger workforce. So together we can build this community in our country where it's economically strong, where we celebrate and provide opportunities for all of us. But let there be no mistake, America is first, and we need to start putting our citizens who some have lost their lives because they're waiting on health care. We need to put their lives first and be real clear about what we're doing in America to protect us. So we need to do something about immigration. Stop it.
Thank you. So now we have some time to meet the candidates in person, on the floor, talk to them, get to know them even more. And give yourselves a huge round of applause for showing up on a Friday night. I mean, honestly, when we started planning this event, it was for Thursday night. And then somebody announced a presidential debate, and everything went into a huge tailspin, and we thought, how on earth are we going to get people to come out here on a Friday night to talk politics? This one was better. Thank you. It was better. Thanks to AARP. Thank you so much to the Mustard Seed Project for all their work in making this happen as well, and to everyone on the KP News team, and to our candidates who gave up their time to come and speak with us. Thank you so, so much. We appreciate all your work. And with that, go out there and don't be afraid to vote.